Welcome to episode 34 of the Tiger 700 project. In the last episode, the panels came out of the molds, so now it's time to mount them. You may remember back when I pulled the molds off the initial plug that I set up some mounting holes so once these final panels were finished, I would have something to register them on the body to make the mounting much easier. And there were 4 points. It's where this part of the body just sets on the frame on both sides, here as well. And then I've got 2 points up front as well, underneath the body. And you can see one right there. And you can see the other one right there. And by having those on there, once I finish the body, I could just finish the body panels. I just set this whole thing down and it's registered. I know where it's supposed to be within 1/8 of an inch, and I can start working on the permanent mounts. For the permanent mounts, it's a fairly large body panel, so there's a number of mounts that I've put on this. I used, you can see this, here's one mount right here, where I took a adhesive fastener. It's basically just a nut on a big flat piece. You can buy these, they're just a couple bucks a piece. And then just using a screw in that, and then basically an aluminum bracket that comes out to set that one. And right here, same sort of idea. It's that same adhesive fastener to a little bit more substantial bracket. Right here as well. So there's 3 along the bottom, and there's 3 along the other side as well. So there's 6 of these along the bottom, 6 mounting points. Then along the top, I've got another bracket that's glued in place. And it comes down to an Allen head. And then there's a pocket there where that's a threaded hole and it screws into that. Gives it plenty of strength. And then back here is a little tight on room. Use the same sort of philosophy on the aluminum bracket, but I used a rivet just because I was really tight on space here to the passenger space. So you might ask yourself, how am I gluing these things on? What is really holding this? You need some sort of structural adhesive. And I have shown this to you before, but I just want to show it to you again. I have been using this SEM Quickset 50. This is really good stuff, very strong, and like the name implies, it's an epoxy that you make the two parts together, and it sets in 50 seconds. So when you're using this, you want to do it fast, but it's really a great adhesive. On the rear panel, it's smaller, but it covers the engine and transmission and all the working, so that's got to come on and off frequently for just maintenance on the car. So you've got to think about pulling that off very quickly. I'm building the brackets for the rear body section right here. And the way this is going to work is actually, it's not going to be hinged. It's just going to kind of be on a set of pins that roll down on here. And then just set down, and then down below it'll latch. But this is somewhat of a complicated piece to make. So of course you start with a template. We'll call this a CAD template, a cardboard aided design. And it's complicated enough where I needed to use a plasma cutter to cut it out of the steel. So the next step was I traced it onto a piece of just really thin, I think this is like 1/4 inch plywood, and just picked up the same shape. And the reason I do the plywood here is when I cut with a plasma torch, it gives me something to rest my plasma torch against. And so I can just use it and just run my plasma torch just around the edge and use this to actually guide the plasma torch versus trying to do it freehand, which just never works for me.
So then you end up with the metal, and since Plasma Torch has a nozzle and then the part that cuts is out just a little bit, the piece of metal ends up being about 1/8 of an inch too big all the way around. But that's okay because there's slag all the way around that edge as well, so you need to use a grinder to bring it down. So then I use this with an angle grinder to bring it down to the final shape. And this is what you get. So here's the pin that'll fit down in the bracket. Again, it's going to slide right down like that and hold it in place. And then this portion over here will be epoxied to the rear body shell. Let me show you the bare body shell here, right over here. And you can see it's all carbon fiber, 4 layers of 6-ounce carbon fiber throughout. But in this area, there's a little bit of stiffness, extra stiffness needed for where I'm going to epoxy this to the body. So what I've done is I put an extra patch in here of another 4 layers of 6-ounce carbon fiber. So all in all, in this one section, the stiffened section, there's 8 layers of carbon fiber altogether. And that gives me some stiffness here because this is going to essentially point load the body in that area. So I want the extra strength and stiffness there. So you can see I've put the patch in there. I've also sanded it here to give it some bite. So when I put in the epoxy, it's sure to stick. I've also, you can see I've masked the end of where the screw comes through so I don't end up gluing the screw into the fastener. And a little bit of masking tape there to ensure that I don't make a mess of the nut that's on there. So here's a better look at the mounts from the inside with the rear cowl off. Here again, you can see this adhesive fastener with a bolt, and that is actually a very strong mount. We've got this foam piece that I built and covered with fiberglass, and you'll see on the bottom that there's some carbon fiber in there as well. Simply glued that on, and that made a very solid mount for the rear. Down below, we have these push button mounts. Simply press this button and it releases the other side. Again, glued on with the SEM Quick 50. Down below, those push button releases come down to this, and it's got a little spring on it. And it simply, you push it on it and it engages and locks it in. These right here are to guide the panel in place, so it clicks in right away. And here are the finished mounts for the rear cowl. You can see the plasma cut bracket and the stud that's been bonded to the body and how it fits in. It slides in from the right to the left. And down below, this is the push button release. Engage. Just press that little button and the ball pops out of the stud. And that's how you release the rear cowl. Again, bonded with the Quick 50 adhesive. On the rear, you can now see the molded bracket that I made a while back. It was made out of foam and covered in fiberglass and carbon fiber, and you can see it actually sitting on the metal bracket now. So that provides a very solid support for the rear of the rear cowl. So 5 points all together. It's a very solid mount and it pops off in a jiffy. Here is the clay model that I used to design the plug. You can see there's this area behind the driver's head, right here, sort of a cone shape, that I need to build now. That was intended to be a grill to let warm air out of the engine compartment and keep the engine cool. And I'm going to build that out of an aluminum perforated sheet, and that's going to go on the back. I started by making a template of this shape, this triangular shape right here, because I'm going to build a bracket to go in there. Using that template, I then cut that out of aluminum, and this is the end result, is that shape. You can see right in the middle here where this bar comes in, and this is sort of shaped in such a way where when I'm pulling that rear bonnet on and off, this is going to help line it up with the roll bar and help actually me fit it in place properly when that rear engine hatch is coming on and off. I then took a sheet of perforated aluminum. It's a hexagonal sort of perforation. And then bent it to that basic triangle shape, mainly just with my hands and my knee and, just sort of soft surfaces. Then I used this sandbag to get the very last part of the roundness in, and just use this off of my argon tank, the round part, and just beat it in until I got the right shape. Took all that, and then I actually made two of these. There's one you can't see, there's one on the outside, and there's actually one on the inside as well. And I used that to sandwich the sheet in between those two pieces of aluminum, and then riveted it together with flathead rivets. And actually made quite a strong shape. In addition to that, I needed a handhold on the front to pick this rear cowl up and out when I want to get ready to do some maintenance on the engine. So I also included this little handle. Gives me a handhold on the front, and then I can hold onto the back as well and pull it off easily. Once I got that all together, I laid it in the opening, and then holding it in place there, then I sort of just basically made this flange in the car so it fits the edge of the opening. Now it's time to attach the teardrop grill to the body panel. The front of the grill attaches the body panel through a flathead countersunk rivet on each side, and then it is glued around the perimeter with an adhesive. Now to hold this up while the glue is drying, I've got a little rack system here where you see there's a string here going to basically just a nail or a rivet here, just kind of holding it up. And if you follow that string around, I have a 5-pound weight on that. So that holds the grill up while the glue is drying. And here it is all together. The rear cowl and the cone grill. Let me show you how it comes off. First, the little push button down below, just press it. That releases that. Do the other one on the other side. All right, pull up the little handle, and on it comes. The other removable body panel is the front cowl, and allows me to get inside here to do maintenance in here as well. You can see it pops right out. I've got a couple of long brackets here, and that's so when you put it in, these actually push against the top of this and it holds the top down. And then on the underside, I have hold downs with these bungee straps that actually attach down to the frame to hold it in place. With the front cowl removed, you can now see this flange that I spent quite a bit of time building when I was doing the molding process. And it basically comes up at a vertical profile there, and that's so when I'm driving it and have it get caught in the rain, I won't get rain inside this mechanical and electrical area. You can see the switches and the gauge wiring on the back of the dash. Makes it very easy to maintain. I've got my 2 brake reservoirs I've got a fuse and relay panel, as well as getting access to accelerator pedal, my entire brake system up front, and clutch, as well as all the way down into the front here. I can actually reach my front coilover shocks as well. That's can't quite see the second one in this photo, but there's 2 shocks in there, one next to each other, and I can work on those as well. So having this second cowl, removable cowl, makes this car very easy to maintain.